sergeants! Yeah!
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. Wherever you are, and whatever you're doing, I hope that you're having a fantastic day. I finally had a chance to get around to refreshing my smithing guide, so you'll once again know the best way to make as much money as possible through smithing. I do guides like this on a weekly basis, as well as playthroughs on Twitch that I then upload to YouTube for everyone to watch, and also try and sprinkle in some more entertaining videos here and there. So if you enjoy the content and you're not already subscribed, please consider doing so. As always, any links that I talk about throughout the video will be posted down in the description, including a link to our Discord server where you can join in and then you can interact with us 24/7. You'll always be able to catch me on there if you have any questions. Now with that all said, let's take you into the new and improved smithing guide. Firstly, I'll obviously start with the character creation. I'm going to make a very well-rounded character rather than one that heavily relies on smithing, because I want to make this realistic and I want to show you what it's going to be like in your playthrough. There are a few content creators in the Bannerlord community that have specifically said that one culture is just better than the rest. It's simply not true. They all have their own strengths and weaknesses depending on what you're going for. For instance, Kazayat has arguably one of the best strengths, but you can't make the most of it if you're not going for mounted troops, or if you're not going to be hanging around Kazayat for the first half of your playthrough. Same with Britannia, absolutely fantastic for running away from armies and for chasing armies down. But if you're spending most of your time in the desert, then it's useless. The only one that is completely universal is the Empire. So based on universal bonuses, Empire in theory is the best one, but even I don't believe that. My personal favourite is Botanian, because there's a lot of forests pretty much everywhere in the map. But honestly, if anyone tries to tell you one culture is better than the rest, don't listen to them. Choose whichever one is going to fit wherever you're going and whatever your playstyle is for that current playthrough. So because this guide is purely based on smithing, it doesn't matter what I pick, so I'm going to go with my favourite, which is Botania. Again, it does not matter what our character looks like, so there we go. Now, as I say, I'm going to make this realistic, so I'm not just going to spam everything into smithing, because my character would be so unbalanced for the rest of the game then. They wouldn't be able to lead an army, they wouldn't be very good at fighting. So I'll have a very quick look at this, and I'll show you what my character looks like at the end, because I may not even take one single point in smithing initially, but we'll see. Okay, cool. This is my character. Let me just take you back through and show you exactly what I picked. So I always love focusing on the social skills. I also highly recommend getting at least 1 point in a melee skill, 1 point in a range skill, and focusing on a little bit of riding and athletics, so you've got a bit of an easier start when it comes to combat as well. I personally always prefer bows and polearms, so this is the setup I've gone for. And to replicate that, should you want to, I've gone for healers, your attention to detail, sold produce at market, trained with the Hearthguard, you invested some money in land, and of course 30 years old for a few extra focus and attribute points at the start of the game. Doesn't really matter what your banner looks like, but just in case anyone didn't know you could do this, you can invert the colours and make some really cool combinations. As we're going to become a great blacksmith, I was hoping for a hammer and chisel or something like that, but a massive sword will do just fine. And of course, Beardy McBeardface here made the wonderful choice of subscribing to Domtastic Gaming and became part of the clan. We'll set it on Bannerlord as always. Another thought has just occurred to me actually. Starting in Britannia is probably one of the best places you can start with for smithing, because you start right by Seanon, which is fantastic because it has 3 villages nearby that all produce hardwood, so you will not have any issues with getting your materials. Okay, before we do anything, this is where I am going to go a little bit ham on these focus points, because it will significantly increase our learning rate early game. Also, to make this significantly easier for yourself, it would actually be quite handy to grab any one companion right at the start of the game as well, because you can both smith together. He did cost me a significant amount of money then, which is unfortunate. There are far cheaper ones, but let's grab us both a bit of food so we don't starve. Okay, now we've got to the part where we want to buy all of the materials that we need to actually start crafting. I'm going to omit some of the footage here because I made a few mistakes that you don't need to make, so I will talk you through and explain exactly what it is you need to do. And I'll reinforce that with some text on the screen so that you know the most efficient way to start off, and then you don't need to make the mistakes that I made whilst doing this. To start with, we'll grab some hardwood to refine into charcoal so that we can actually smelt. And as you'll see here, I've also picked up a blacksmith hammer, a wooden hammer, a pitchfork, and an iron pitchfork. This is so that I could compare what they all smelt down into versus the cost to make sure that you're buying the most efficient items. After doing this testing, there's only 2 of the items that you would even want to consider buying, and that's the wooden hammer and the blacksmith hammer. The wooden hammer, because it smelts down into 3 hardwood, so if you're at a town that doesn't sell hardwood, then just buy and smelt wooden hammers to get the wood that you need. And the blacksmith hammer is great because it will give you 1 crude iron and 1 wrought iron, so you're getting them early crafting materials relatively cheap because it isn't that expensive. But for the most part, if the town that you're in has hardwood, buy that as it is because it'll be far cheaper than smelting down the wooden hammers. And then we will revisit the other weapons we'll be buying to smelt down to get the more expensive, rarer materials like the steel, the fine steel, etc. So now that I've cleared all that up, you hopefully won't waste lots of your starting money like I did, but should you run low on funds, because we're not really going to be traveling anywhere anyway, honestly, sell all of your starting gear. It will give you like another 1,000 dinars, and then what you want to do, as I say, is just buy yourself maybe 15 or 20 hardwood, and then you want to get a few Highland throwing daggers and a few tribesmen throwing daggers. The Highland throwing daggers will give you the lower tier materials, and then the tribesmen throwing daggers, obviously they're far more expensive, but they'll give you the much better materials. And then once you've got them, smelted them down and rested up again to get your smithing stamina back to full, we're now ready to actually start crafting and making some money. Okay, and now all that's done, we can actually craft something. I would say early game, the most efficient thing to craft in regards to profit, experience, and also materials required is going to be your 2-handed swords. So you can tick this button here to show only unlocked pieces, and then at first you basically just want to max out every slider and have the swing cut damage as high as possible. I can only craft 1 of these at the moment, however, as you'll see, already that is selling for 600 dinars. Which gives us enough money to buy some more materials. So we'll get some more tribesmen throwing daggers for the higher tier mats, and then we'll also get ourselves a couple of blacksmith hammers. Again, we're going to use our companion to smelt them down and make a bit more charcoal for us. And then we'll go back in and craft another sword. No, we won't, because we don't have quite enough wrought iron. We can sort that out though. There we go. We unlocked a new part for that little bit extra swing cut damage, then sell it again, and we're essentially just going to repeat this process a few times until we've got 25 blacksmithing, and I'll come back to you then when we've hit 25 blacksmithing and we can start turning these profits much, much higher. And as you can see, it may not be the most interesting start to a playthrough in the world, but we're literally not having to move anywhere, and we are just turning money into more money. You just need to be efficient with your crafting materials, and this is an absolute cakewalk in no time. There we go, we've hit 25 smithing, so before we use any of these materials, we're going to go back into the character screen, and we are going to get the efficient charcoal maker perk, which means getting charcoal from now on is much cheaper, much easier, because we're actually going to make 3 units for every 2 unit of hardwood instead of 1. So we're actually increasing the profit by 50% rather than reducing it by 50%. It's going to be absolutely fantastic. We've just unlocked another new smithing part. Let's have a look. That does increase the damage ever so slightly, and it's actually going to use some fine steel. Along with the swing cut damage, the higher quality materials you're using, the more profit it's going to make. Hopefully this doesn't now prove me wrong. We go to sell these. Instead of making about 700, there you go. Nearly 1,000 already. Just added an extra 200 to 300 dinars, and again we can just turn that profit into more crafting materials. So we'll get a few Highland throwing daggers, a few tribesmen throwing daggers. We are going to use up my stamina to get some more charcoal, and then we're going to use Dermot to actually do the smelting. Look at that, we've already started to build up an abundance of materials. This is insane. And now at this point, this is something else I should mention to you that was covered in the previous smithing guide, but if you haven't seen it, you can actually switch certain grips from one-handed to two-handed, and when you do that, the stats will significantly change. This is something you definitely want to do. Always make sure two-handed is selected, because if you accidentally craft this one-handed, profits will plummet, absolutely plummet. And now I'm also actually going to use Dermot to craft 1 or 2 of these as well, because with his skill going up, he can start to be our refiner so that we can focus all of our stamina on the forging. Look at that, 1,500 a piece. We've been doing this for a couple of days and we've made 3.5 grand profit. Okay, now I'm recruiting a few mules and units just so that we move around the map a bit quicker. Well, that's a bugger. It's fine. I'll just pay him off. It's not like we can't afford it. Goodbye. As I was saying, just so that we can move around the map a bit quicker, and also so things like that don't happen, because we've ran out of throwing daggers in this city. So I'm just about to introduce you to the other really effective, really efficient way to get cheap materials fast. And that is Pugios and Xiphos. Some would argue they're even better than the two throwing daggers that we've been using because they're cheaper. And the Xiphos specifically give you lots and lots of low-level materials. The Pugios are just great because of how efficient they are cost-wise. Check this out, my friends. Look at that. What were they? 250 dinars? And they're going to give us 2 wrought iron, 1 steel, 1 fine steel. Absolutely fantastic. Let's smelt all them, replenish our stamina, and we'll be good to go. And whilst we're waiting, the tribesman throwing daggers and also the highland throwing daggers, the weaker version, they can pretty much be found in any city throughout the world, whereas the Pugios and Xiphos will only spawn in empire cities. If you're not sure how you know, it's basically all the ones in the center of the map, but if you hover over any city, it will tell you what culture it is. Just there. So, as I say, Pugios and Xiphos only spawn in empire towns, but they are much more common. Obviously, things like war and prosperity are going to affect that, so from playthrough to playthrough that will differ. You might have a playthrough where they're particularly rare if the empire are getting battered, but hopefully, usually that's not the case. Look at that. Some of them are even going over 2k now. We've got 10,000 dinars. I reckon after our next round, we can even then go and buy a workshop, and that will take me onto my refresh workshop guide. It'll be coming out in a few days. Until then, my current workshop guide is still pretty up to date, but what that will do is that will offset our party wages, so we'll be getting passive income every day to fuel our smithing empire even more. Okie dokie, we just hit 50 smithing then, and I took the increased rate of learning new design parts when smelting by 100%. So now, whenever I buy anything that I want to smelt down, my main character is going to be the one that does so, because there's a higher chance that he's going to discover new designs when smelting. We are unfortunately a little bit low on materials right now. So what I'm doing is just focusing on any items that will use up all my materials, rather than being efficient with the min-maxing, because we're still getting loads of money out of it, because there aren't quite as many weapons around at the moment as I hoped there would be. I'm guessing they're going to start to spawn a bit more frequently in the mid-game. And as you've probably also noticed, I've also been getting a nice variety of food so that I can increase my steward skill, along with some mounts and some mules so that we're not too over-encumbered, and decent army to protect me on my travels. So we are losing 80 dinars a day, but it's not going to be long now until we can get a workshop and start to offset that and just make free money forever. Perfect, that's a bit better. See if we can get any. Oh yes please, look at that. This is going to be good. Is there hardwood as well? That would be the icing on an already delicious cake. Unfortunately, no icing today. However, as you already know, we can just use wooden hammers. Okie dokie. And by the way, your smithing stamina actually increases and also replenishes quicker the higher your smithing skill. So you'll see Beardy McBeardface has 126 smithing stamina, whereas Foros, the robber, only has 103. Gonna replenish the stamina just once more so that the main man can get us some more charcoal, as he's the only one that has that efficient perk at the moment. Nearly at 25 stewards, so we'll get another perk, and that's just been going up for free as we've been traveling around. Honestly, smithing can synergize so well with just leveling up your character. It's great. And I'm just gonna make as many of these as I can, because it'll increase my other guys' skills as well. Make a significant amount of money out of that. And we now have enough for a workshop. I'll show you my personal favourite and also the best workshops in my refresh workshop guide that'll be coming up hopefully within the next week. But until then, let me give you a little sneaky tidbit. Wool weavery in Poros is on par with wool weaveries in Kazet. It's fantastic. It makes so much money. Let's see who's got one. We might have to visit the town just to check. Okay, we have got a pottery shop over there. We've got some kind of weavery. What is that? Where's the trigger? There you go. Wool there. Oh, wool. Yes, perfect. That's what we're after. Let's do it. Hello? Is anybody home? You'll do. I would like to buy this, please. Yes, thank you. I don't want to change what you're making. I would like wool. Goodbye. Whilst we're here, do you have any Xiphos for me? Oh, tribesman throwing dagger, though. That'll do nicely. I will wrap up the main portion here and give you a bunch of extra tips that are going to help you on your way to 300 smithing skill and becoming a legendary blacksmith. Because at this point, it is just more of the same. You're just buying them tribesmen throwing daggers, you're buying them Pugios, and then you're just going to smelt them down and craft better and better weapons. So for your main smith, this is the route I advise you take in the skill tree. You want to take these two here so that you have double chance of learning new crafting parts through the actual act of smithing. And then this means you've got a 10% chance to create a fine weapon. A fine weapon means it's going to have better stats, therefore it will sell for a lot more. And also, if and when you dabble in crafting orders, which can be quite profitable actually, check them out yourself, they're very easy to get your head round. It means that when you successfully complete one, you increase your relation with that notable by +2. This one here, I actually advise the bottom route for your main smither because it synergizes really well with the perk we took at 50. So this increases the rate of learning new parts when smelting, and then this means that you can smelt twice as much because stamina spent smelting, that was a bit of a tongue twister then, is halved. This one is the same thing but for refining, but hopefully by that point your companions will have these 4 perks to make all the various steels and they will be your refiners. Then here you can increase your control or your vigor, completely up to you, depends on whether you're going more melee focused for vigor or more ranged with control. This one I would ideally love to have both of them, it's great. So this top one here means that you're going to make more money when selling large volumes of smithed weapons. So that's good, it means you're going to make some more money. This one means that you can smith twice as often. Honestly, they're both great. If you're having trouble with your smithing stamina, grab this one. If not, grab the top one to make some more money. This one you have to grab, works the exact same as a fine weapon, but it's a masterwork, so it's even better. This one I would definitely recommend during smith. It just means your smithing is going to have a higher learning rate and you'll be able to reach the end of the skill tree a bit faster. This one just adds 1 focus point in one-handed and two-handed. Not bad, but enduring smith is definitely the one you want to go for. This one is literally just increase the damage by 2% of either swing weapons or thrust weapons. I've always favoured swing, but this is completely down to you. And then finally, the one you have to take, absolutely incredible here, your character has a 5% chance to create a legendary weapon, and that chance is increased by 1% for every skill point above 300, and exactly the same as with a masterwork or a fine weapon, its stats are just going to be crazy, as is the money that it sells for. That's really all you need to know, and what I'd advise is every perk that you take on your main smith, you take the opposite, you take the opposing perk for your 1 or 2 refiners and smelters so that they can each pick up each other's slack. I hope that all makes sense. If you have any other questions or comments, please leave them down in the comment section. I do my best to answer every single comment that I get. I love to do so. I love your questions. I love your feedback. And with that, he's got a workshop that's making him some money. He's got enough money that he can actually buy his clothes back again. It's perfect. You are well on your way to becoming the ultimate blacksmith. I hope this has helped. I hope you enjoy. I hope you have loads of fun. And I'll see you in the next one. Have an incredible day, everyone. Bye-bye.